My name is Ava Reynolds. I was 29 years old when my father slammed a thick, stapled invoice onto the dinner table like he was serving a court order instead of meatloaf. "You owe this family $15,000 in back rent," he said, tapping the page sharply with 2 fingers. My mother didn't even look embarrassed. She lifted her wine glass and added calmly, "We're charging interests now, 13% a month, like any responsible landlord." Leela laughed so hard she nearly dropped her phone. "Ava's credit score is about to go negative," she smirked, her thumbs flying across the screen as she couldn't wait to tell her friends. Then my father slid over a second sheet, a neat payment plan with columns, due dates, and heavy penalties. "First installment of $1,500 is due this Saturday," he announced. "Miss it and we sell your car." My Uncle Marcus, who always showed up uninvited when humiliation was being served, nodded like a preacher delivering judgment. "Tough love is the only language freeloaders understand." I stared at the invoice in silence. That's when I noticed something strange. In tiny print at the bottom was a timestamp from a local print shop. The document had been printed 13 days earlier, long before I had even moved my boxes back into the house. They hadn't reacted to me coming home. They had planned this ambush. The table was set, the lines rehearsed, and the entire family had waited for me to sit down so they could turn a quiet family dinner into something cruel. Have you ever realized that the home which raised you had quietly become the first place designed to break you? I didn't scream. That bothered them the most. I simply placed my fork down, folded the invoice once, and looked slowly around the table, memorizing every. I looked back at the paper. Rent, utilities, inconvenience fee, late adjustment, emotional strain surcharge. He had invented charges just to push the total to $15,000. "Emotional strain?" I repeated. My mother leaned forward. "Do you know how much stress you've caused this family over the years?" Lila snorted. Honestly, she should be grateful Dad didn't bill her every month. Then she posted something on her private story and tilted the screen so I could see the caption, "Freeloader moved back home, LOL." That hurt more than I expected. There's something especially rotten about watching your own sister turn your worst moment into entertainment. I stood up and took the invoice with me. "Sit down," my father barked. "We're not done." "No," I said. "You are." Upstairs in the bedroom that used to be mine, most of my things were already gone. The bookshelf I built in high school had been removed. My debate trophy photo was missing. And across the family portrait in the hallway, someone had drawn a big red X through my face with a dry erase marker. Temporary cruelty is still cruelty. A powerful memory hit me hard. When I was 16, my father's contracting business was collapsing. They were 3 weeks from missing the mortgage. I sold my laptop, the one I needed for school, and the camera I had saved for 2 summers. I lied to my friends and said it was stolen. I handed every penny to my mother in a grocery store parking lot so my father wouldn't feel emasculated. Years later, when they spoke about sacrifice, they only talked about their own pain. They never mentioned the daughter who quietly gave up pieces of her future so the family could survive. And now those same people were charging me 13%. When I totaled what I could prove, it came to just over $18,000, more if I added interest. Sophie smiled bitterly. "Funny number, isn't it?" She advised me, "Let them think you're wounded and broken. People who love control get careless when they believe they've already won." On the 6th day, I gathered every screenshot, bank statement, old text, and transfer confirmation. The most powerful ones were the $8,400 I sent my mother for property taxes with her reply, "We'll never forget this," and the furnace message where she promised to pay me back after the new year, a promise broken 3 times over. On the 7th night, Lila texted me, "You still sulking? Dad says the first payment is past due. I didn't reply to her. Instead, I sent one message to my father. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Be in the kitchen, everyone. He replied instantly, Good, bring your first payment. Sophie read it and smiled. Perfect. They still think they're running the meeting. The next evening, I walked into the house wearing my work clothes, navy slacks, white blouse, badge on my waist, so they could see exactly who they had called worthless. My father sat at the head of the table, my mother beside him, Lila across from me with a bored expression. Uncle Marcus was there again for the audience. My father extended his hand. Envelope? I placed a thick folder on the table instead. For the next 15 minutes, I spoke calmly while they stayed silent. I laid out every receipt, every transfer, every message. I showed the property tax payment, the furnace charge, the utility bailouts, and the pandemic mortgage help. Then I placed my own spreadsheet in the center, grand total $18,240 that I had quietly contributed over 7 years. My mother went pale. My father tried anger, then denial. Lila stopped smiling. Uncle Marcus suddenly found the salt shaker very interesting. You want rent? I asked. Fine, but before you take $1 from me, I want a signed statement acknowledging all the times I bailed this family out while being treated like a burden. My mother protested. You can't force us to sign that. No, I said. But I can force the truth into this room. I slid 2 typed documents across the table, simple facts, dates, amounts, and acknowledgement that the $15,000 claim had no lease or agreement. After a long silence, my mother signed first with shaky hands. My father signed because he wanted the humiliation to end quickly. It didn't. I took the signed papers, stood up, and said, Now you live with what you tried to do to me. I was halfway to the door when my father called out, You're really walking out over paperwork? I paused. No, I'm walking out because my family mistook access to me for ownership. Exactly 1 week later, my phone exploded at 1:30 a.m. Leela called first, then my mother, then Uncle Marcus. Voicemails and panicked texts flooded in. When I finally called back, Leela was breathless. Mom opened some certified mail. There's a final default notice on the mortgage. They're saying the house could go into accelerated foreclosure. I drove to Uncle Marcus's house where the whole family had gathered in panic. My mother's mascara was streaked. My father looked 10 years older. The smugness was gone from everyone. I read the documents, mortgage delinquency, missed escrow, county tax issues. While they were busy ambushing me for fake rent, their own finances had been collapsing and they had hidden it. My father finally said the words, We need your help. I looked at him. You mean the freeloader? The daughter you wanted to charge retroactive rent? My mother started crying harder. Uncle Marcus tried to play diplomat. Then came the detail that changed everything. They had hidden nearly $20,000 in a separate account, not to save the house, but as a launch cushion for Leela to move to Atlanta. Money for the golden child while they tried to extort me. I felt whatever remaining instinct to protect them cleanly disappear. I told them I would look at the documents, but only if they gave me every statement, every notice, and stopped lying. Fear made them agree quickly. For the next week, I became the responsible adult they had mocked. By day, I handled insurance claims at my job. By night, I negotiated with the lender, organized their mess, and translated it into terms the bank would accept. There was only one narrow path left. A strict reinstatement agreement. One mistake, and foreclosure would accelerate. When the lender offered the terms, my parents heard hope. I heard a final warning. I didn't soften the truth for them. I explained exactly what was required. On the night of the first payment under the new agreement, my father sent the wrong type of check and sent it late. The lender flagged it. The agreement was now at risk. I said nothing. I simply stopped standing between them and the consequences they had created. When the formal acceleration notice arrived, panic filled the house again. They blamed me. Leela even said if I had just paid the fake rent in the beginning, none of this would have happened. I looked at all of them and spoke clearly. Dad hid the mortgage crisis. Mom helped draft a fake invoice. Leela mocked me and posted about me. Uncle Marcus called me a freeloader. And after I still helped you, somehow I'm the one being blamed? No one had an answer. That night, I moved the rest of my things out for good. Before leaving, I looked at the family portrait one last time. The red X had been wiped off, but some stains don't wash away from people. 30 days later, I stood across the street and watched the sheriff's notice being posted on the door of the house where I grew up. A month earlier, I might have felt guilty, but by then I understood. This wasn't revenge in the cruel sense. This was cause and effect. My family had spent years teaching me that actions have consequences. They just never expected the lesson to come back to them. The calls started again. Crying, anger, bargaining. My mother said family doesn't do this. I replied, exactly. My father accused me of humiliating them. I said, no, I documented you. Leela showed up at my office crying and begging for help. I told her she didn't want accountability, she wanted rescue without cost. 1 week before lockout, I made one final transfer of exactly $15,000. Not to my parents, to Leela. Memo line, rent. It wasn't kindness, it was precision. She had laughed when my father demanded fake rent for me. Now she had the same amount and a choice. Save the house and tie herself to their disaster forever, or save herself. She chose herself. She signed a lease in Atlanta and left before the lockout. When my mother learned the money went to Lila instead of them, she screamed exactly the way Lila had described weeks earlier. This time, I didn't come. After the house was lost, my parents started telling relatives and church friends that I had abandoned them in their time of need. I didn't argue. I simply uploaded one calm, time-stamped statement to a private family community group. I attached the fake invoice with its old print timestamp, the signed acknowledgement of all the money I had given, and selected audio clips where they admitted the rent demand was false and intentional. I wrote only one line at the top. I am sharing this because I will not carry a false story for people who built one out of me. The truth spread on its own. My father lost subcontract work. My mother stepped down from her church role. Lila's new employer in Atlanta saw the growing chatter and quietly withdrew the offer she had bragged about. Nobody had to ruin them. They had already done it to themselves. The last time I saw my parents was outside the small apartment they moved into. My father looked smaller. My mother looked tired in a way no makeup could hide. She asked if we could start over. I told her the truth. You wanted me to learn responsibility. This is me learning it. Then I walked away. This story taught me that blood does not excuse exploitation, and a home is not sacred just because you grew up in it. For years, I thought being a good daughter meant absorbing the damage quietly, paying the bill, taking the insult, and keeping the peace. But protecting your peace is not cruelty. Refusing to finance your own humiliation is not selfishness. Sometimes the most powerful response is not loud rage. Sometimes it is simply stepping aside and letting the truth collect what it is owed. If the people who were supposed to protect you tried to turn your love into a debt, would you keep paying it, or would you finally let them face the full price? From my perspective, this wasn't just revenge. It was dignity. It was boundaries. It was refusing to carry a burden that was never mine to begin with. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. If this story touched you, please give it a like. Your support means a lot to me. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories.